So when the EMS folks patched in and say, we're 10 minutes out with this patient who was involved in a motor vehicle accident, she then asked the next important question, is this patient associated with the accident, the gas tanker rollover? And what did EMS find? Oh yeah, and by the way, he's covered in gasoline. They left out that really important information. The next decision she did saved our ER and kept our hospital running, and that was to say, you stay out in the parking lot, we will meet you there. Next call she made, or the first call she made, was the Torrington Fire Department to have them come in and help oversee the response to the hazardous spill. Patient comes out, what's the first thing we do? We take all the clothes off, because clothes carry all the contaminants. So there's 85%, 80%, 75% of your contaminant. Next thing they do, they hooked up the hose and they did a decon, and they cleaned the person off. Now they brought him into the hospital. Now they're not contaminating in our ER. Had that patient come into the ER, that would have changed everything in the ER. Our ER could have been shut down. The fire department could have responded and said, hey, you just brought this patient in. I can't breathe. Your ER is shut down. They have that kind of authority. When we think of an incident, when you're doing a drill for the radiological emergency, that's just what happened. They allowed people that were exposed to the radiation to come in. It was a particle. So they didn't have their isolation process in place, and they contaminated the ER. And the fire official looked and said, hey, if this was the real deal, your ER is now closed. Imagine our ER closed. That's not a good thing, because it has a dramatic impact on the community. And then paint. You'd be surprised how many people drive around with paint, they get in an accident, and then they're covered in paint. That is a hazardous spill. That's something we have to plan for. So what are our priorities? It's all about safety. Safety of our patients, safety of the employees, and safety of the visitors coming into our facility. When I think of what are the first steps, hey, we may have to evacuate. So if you had a chemical spill and it had a vapor and it was a strong odor, you get everyone out of there, because we're looking for safety. The other thing is we want to isolate that chemical spill. So if we had something happen right here, it could be as simple as everyone leave, close those doors behind us, and now we're going to call a fireman and call for help. And then we're going to go to our MSDS sheet, find out what the chemical is, and then we're going to formulate a plan to respond to it. So until we identify the chemical, we can't develop an incident action plan, and that's essential to a response. You have to have a plan. People have to communicate the plan. You have to identify the resources that you need to implement the plan. So that requires a few minutes of conversation so somebody's aware of everything. The other thing is first responders should not be running in. And I look at us as responders in this instance. So we just don't want to run in willy-nilly. We have to have a plan. Fire departments will not just run into a hazardous spill. They're going to come in, they're going to take their time, they're going to identify the chemical, and then they're going to put together a plan. So if we're calling the fire department to respond to a chemical spill in our hospital, they will expect the MSDS sheet. That's what we experience. And they won't come in the hospital until they have the MSDS sheet. And we're going to have to hand it to them. So now I think of my response team at the hospital. And your response team may be a little modified here, so we're going to just look back at your hazmat plan. So the response team includes everyone from the nursing supervisor right to the environmental services. A lot of those people aren't in the building at the time things happen. A lot of them are on call. And we know in evenings, at nights, and on weekends, we have fewer resources and assets available. So we may have to identify and activate additional resources as needed. So your facility, if you're having a code yellow incident, you may need to pull resources in from Charlotte-Huntingford Hospital. And that process is being put in place. So you can activate a code yellow, call the hospital, and now we're going to get you additional resources to help you keep your doors open, provide good, safe care to your patients, and more importantly, provide a safe environment for you to all work in. So the other resource that we also think of is 911. We can request Torrington Fire Department. We can request Winston Fire Department. Just like a day I was working here with the Damon, and you saw the gas thing. Hey, first thing, safety, everyone out. Second thing, let's call 911. What were you doing? You were doing accountability of everyone out in the parking lot, and we did that. And we waited for the fire department. The fire department showed up, and they did their walkthrough. Okay, it's clear, it's safe to go back to work. Business back to usual. So when we go to the safety data sheets, we can also think of the MSDS sheet. So back in 1983, when they put all this together, their intent was so people can look up chemicals and understand the chemical and put together a response plan, understand the first aid, the fire response. But what the problem was that there wasn't a standard form. So in 2012, they put together a standard form. So now there's 16 sections. The titles are all the same. The information's in the same order. And all these sections break everything down. So now you understand the hazards. Now you're going to understand your first aid response, what you have to do to provide medical care for that patient. Fire departments now can see a section that impacts them, and they can see how they have to fight this chemical. So regardless of what MSDS sheet you look at, they're all going to be put in the same order. This is just the pictograms that they're also using. And instead of having words you have to read, you need pictures, because things have to be really simple, because in a disaster and an emergency, people are overwhelmed, they can't think well, and they have to look at a picture. So now we want to think of what about our MSDS sheet. Now I can't help the fact that it's not as intuitive as you may all want, so it means you have to practice. So when you look at an MSDS sheet, remember it's not your coworker you may be helping, it may be your coworker helping you. So I'd encourage all of you to take a few minutes every day and grab a chemical and look it up, because in order to be comfortable with it, you have to do it over and over and over again. And after you do it a couple times, you're going to feel much more comfortable. So we go onto the internet and we're going to click something called links. That will take you to a list of different websites and external resources that may be very helpful. So you're going to scroll down and you're going to go right to the MSDS Material Safety Data Sheet. You're going to click onto that. The next screen is going to give you an area where you can type in the chemical. In this case, we're going to type in betadine solution. So when you type in the betadine solution, there it appears. Now we click right onto the PDF icon, print out 2 copies. One for our response, one for the fire department. Because what are we going to have to do? We're going to have somebody greet the fire department with the MSDS sheet telling us what the problem is. In this case, because it's a small facility, we know our plan is to just evacuate. Where in the hospital, they may have to just evacuate a wing of the floor. Like in the case that we had our chemical release in September, we had to evacuate all of 6th floor where we take care of patients. The whole floor got evacuated, went on the other side of the doors. From there, the decision was made to what room and where else in the hospital they're going to be allocated. So what do we have to do? We have to track the patients, so it's a whole process, but we had to have a team respond. So here's what an MSDS form looks like. But anyway, so what are we thinking about? If it's a chemical release, I want to be able to recognize it. I also want to recognize if there's a potential of having a problem. So I want to have an awareness of what I'm working with. So oftentimes, or most of the time, containers should have labels on them so you know what they're all about. What are some things that can tell me there's a hazardous leak, hazardous issue? Well, I can see a container if it's leaking out. The other day when we were looking at our hazmat closet, because it was just a mess, and I had to bring our safety officer, I said, look at this. I looked at a gallon container to pick it up to see what it was, and it had a crack. It had a hairline crack, but when I lifted it up, what happened? The sides of the container, it was like a milk jug, went in, and the chemical spilled all over me. I was like, yikes. Well, fortunately, it was just like really super strong vinegar, so I wasn't injured. And I'm looking at the guy going, yikes, here's a hazard. So now we have to look it up. We have to figure out what to do with it and how to dispose of it. Because what if that was somebody else and it splashed in their eyes? Though it wasn't harmful to my hand, it would have been extremely harmful for my eyes, and that could have been a huge problem. So how we store things is going to be revisited. So anyways, one of the things when it was leaking, it gave off a really strong odor. Some cases it's a vapor. Sometimes we have gases we use to disinfect and clean, and there could be a gas that results. So when I think of evidence of a contaminant or a hazardous spill, I think of vapors, I think of odors, and I think of other things, and I think of the visual leak. Now we go to the MSDS. So I think of that as my primary resource, but there's other resources at our fingertips, and they include container labels. Oftentimes a container label will have an insert, and it'll have the MSDS sheet right on it, and it'll give us a little more information. Other things include poison control. We can call poison control. Great resources right here. They're on our hazardous response plan on the internet under emergency preparedness. These are links that will take you to different websites, provide you information. When we do the hazmat training here, you're going to know that you have to look up 3 resources and what to do and how to respond to that spill and chemical. So remember, safety, isolation, notification. It's all about your safety. You want to isolate the spill, and you want to notify the right people. Don't overthink it. Keep it really simple. So I'm going to talk about safety. I want to assess the situation. So my response is not to run in there blindly. It's to assess the situation, identify the resources that I'm going to need, and I want to be aware of the risks. Everything has risks. So what information do I have? What information do I need? So the next step is isolation. That could be as simple as we talk about closing the doors and not letting anyone in. Because if I let people in and I don't have control over the scene, people can spread the contaminant throughout the hospital, and that can have a dramatic effect on the hospital. I want to be safe. I want you to be safe. I want everyone in the hospital to be safe. So what am I saying? Safety, isolation, and notification. So now when you think of notification, you're going to have your own response team that's actually detailed in our hazardous plan. But at Charles Hungerford, that includes the supervisor. See, think of the people here. You can have like a 5-person response team. And we don't have that many more people there. We just have different people in leadership, so we have more people to bounce ideas off. We still use the fire department. They're part of our response plan. And the Winston Fire Department is also very helpful for here. So I covered everything really quickly. So if you have any questions, ask away, and thanks for your attention.
Please take the time to go pick a chemical, your hairspray, anything. Take the time to go on the internet and try to look it up. So that it's a huge joint commission thing where they might ask you, find me the safety data sheet on this chemical. It's really easy to find it. If you have any trouble, you can see me, Wynn's used it in practice. Just one of those things that's really good to know so that you're not fumbling and in a pinch.
Is there still a book with the MSD?
We still do have the books, however the hospital opted to go with the sort of online permanent, always updated system. The problem with the books I found is that I would go to update them every 2 years. And I would have safety data sheets that were close to 30 years old, and I could not find more current information, and we all know it had to have changed.
Okay. We're going to add this location as another one for the backup. So if we lose the internet, you don't have your MSD sheet. So we're doing backups right now and putting them on computers at the hospital. So what Michelle could do is identify a computer she wants it loaded up on, and we'll do that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.